They will say the graphics aren't done. They will say this and this feels crap. The faster you fail, the less time you waste. Shut your mouth, don't say anything, and the reason why a lot of people add things to their games is because
Also, when you have like a playable version of it, how important do you think is that early playtest? Because fun and engagement that you're talking about, fun could be subjective. You find it fun, but for a group of people that you know, friends and families, how do you go with that? What's your take on playtesting in the first initial phases?
you should playtest as early as possible. There's always this problem that game developers have, that they're reluctant to playtest because they know that certain systems aren't done yet and they don't want to hear that in the feedback. It's like, okay, I don't have the graphics yet, and I know if I'm gonna playtest this now, people are gonna tell me that the graphics are not done yet. And it's like, I know that, so I have to finish the graphics before I have them playtested, right? And that's not the correct way to think about playtesting. It's just like, let people playtest the game, shut your mouth, don't say anything, and if you already know they're gonna say certain things, just let them say it. You don't have to defend it. You don't even have to give a disclaimer up front. Like you don't even have to say, hey, this and this isn't quite done yet. Just let them play it. They will tell you the things that you know they're gonna say. They will say the graphics aren't done. They will say this and this feels crap, even though you know it feels crap. It's okay. Just let them play. Just let them say whatever they want to say. Like don't have your ego can take it, is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, playtest early, playtest often. Fail faster is one thing you hear a lot. The faster you fail, the less time you waste. So if you the earlier you let people playtest the thing, the sooner you see what you need to change. So essentially it makes you more efficient. The more and the sooner you playtest, the faster you will arrive at a good result, because it's delusional to think that your first design is gonna be perfect. That's what you need playtesting for. It's to refine your design to get to a point where it's better and better and better.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that is absolutely true, man. Because even in smallest of the conferences or events, when you actually take your game to that, even if it's unfinished and you get that feedback from people over there, that's also like very crucial, because that's the real audience of your game. And like I've seen it with my games as well, and it has drastically shaped the entire flow of the game, because you build it from one point of view and then you get to realize, oh, this can be done with a very different. I also see some mistakes that people do while playtesting with a small group is they try to explain a lot while the people are playing it, right?
That's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, instead just watch how people get frustrated, or say all sorts of things about your game. Yeah, I mean that makes more sense, man. I played Thronefall, and let me tell you, the art style, it just, that's the thing that got me on Steam to actually go and play the game, right? It's beautiful. I was curious what really inspired Thronefall's minimalist, their art style plus that strategic loop. Because usually, it's very, for the RTS games, it's usually a very complex and heavy loops, right? But this is like a very fun but a light version of all that. How did you come to that part of the game?
It's mostly necessity and embracing our constraints, right? Because we're only a two-man team. We can't make a super complex RTS art style. We cannot pixel all of those buildings and so on. We can't make realistic 3D models for every building. That's not in the realm of possibility. Or I guess we could, but then it would take 5 times longer to make the game, and the game wouldn't even necessarily sell better. So
Yeah.
it's kind of one of the pillars that I also like to talk about is scope, right? So how big your game is, and essentially what I mean with that is how cost efficient are you with what you do. Like you can make a game in 1 year, or you can make the same game in 5 years. So we could have made Thronefall like 3 times longer. We could have extended the production times to 3 times its size. But that doesn't mean it would have done better. So you kind of try to find the optimal size for each project where you get the most bang for your buck. And for Thronefall, that's just we were like, Yeah, so the graphics are not really the main selling point here, so that's probably not what the majority of our resources should go into. And that's why we intentionally picked a very minimal art style. And then once you make the decision to go for a minimal art style, you obviously still try to do it tastefully, right? It's not like, okay, we're gonna neglect graphics, like graphics aren't important, so we're gonna make them very shit. It's more like graphics aren't important, so we're gonna make something that we can do very quickly, but that still looks okay. And I think for Thronefall that luckily worked out. I have to give credit to my partner Paul, who did most of the art for Thronefall. And essentially, we downloaded a toon shader from the Unity asset store. Then we created a bunch of very, very simple 3D shapes in Blender, very low poly, very minimalist. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah,
Like
but all
there's
together,
no,
everything put together, it looks really beautiful.
yeah.
See, because it's you pick all sorts of shaders and all, but unless and until you have that vision of that color palette and how the contrast looks and how it appeals the players, you couldn't reach to that kind of a visual, even with minimalistic art style, right? And I think that same reflects in the other game as well, in Islanders as well, right? They're visually very beautiful. One thing that you just mentioned was about the scope and you being two people studio, like two people working on a game, right? This is my observation. They feel very tight, they're focused, and they're very polished, right? How do you know? And this all comes to the scope of the game. How do you know when to stop adding features? Because this is a generic problem with a lot of failed indie games because they run out of scope. They just go into the loop of feature creep, right? That's where most of the games don't finish. So what is your thought on that? Like, how do you make those decisions when to stop adding more features? These are like important ones, and is there any process that you follow for that?
I think it's a lot about the design philosophy you have going into it. A lot of people, the way they make games is they take a game they find cool. Like they have some games that they use as inspiration, and then they're like, I want to make something like that. But in order to make it unique and different, I have to add something on top, right? And if you make games like that, then you end up with a lot of feature creep because you have to make everything that's already there plus put your own stuff on top of it. And that's just too much, especially for small indie teams. So if you want to take this approach of using other games for inspiration, then the first thing you need to do is you need to remove things. And then you have room to add new things. But if the only thing you do is add new things to an idea, then it's just going to end up with too much. So for example, what we did with Thronefall is very strong inspiration from strategy games like Stronghold, Age of Empires, and so on. And then we were like, how can we reduce this to make it more manageable for us? So we said, okay, you can only place building on a couple of select fields. We also control which buildings you can place where. So we're going to take that decision away from the player. We're only going to have a couple of different units. You're not going to be able to control your units with the mouse. You're only going to be able to basically control the units with your character by making the units follow you around. So already we boiled it down to make it much, much simpler and more manageable for us. And that created new room for us to add things that we like. For example, we added a really cool perk system. We added a really cool upgrade system. We added lots and lots of enemy variety, and we made some really cool campaign. And the reason why we had the resources to create all of this is because we reduced it first. We boiled it down first, and then we added our own things to it. The same for Islanders. We were like, okay, let's take inspiration from city builders. Let's reduce all of the complexity. Let's only have one resource. Let's make it so you can actually build houses for free.
Yeah.
Like building doesn't cost anything in Islanders. So we reduced it very, very, very much. And then to make up for it, we were like, okay, now that we have room, what do we add instead? And it's like, we'll add procedurally generated islands, we'll add lots of different buildings because they're so simple to make for us, so we can add a ton of them. And I think that's a great way to make indie game, is if you start with an inspiration point, which a lot of developers do, let's be honest. Then start with reducing it, then add your own things. That's what I would recommend. Or if you want to take a different approach to it, then start with your idea. And just be careful about how much stuff you add.
No, what I hear from you is there is a lot of planning and time put into the pre-production before you start.
Yeah.
Yeah, like thinking about, okay, these are 10 things in an inspiration. Having that entire understanding of what to remove and what to add even before you start the development of the game gives you a clear path of the entire scope of the game at least. And a lot of people do mistakes in the same thing, like they start with that basic idea and they just keep on adding and adding and adding without having like a clear path of that whole scope of the game, right?
Yeah, adding is very dangerous. So you have to essentially, before you add anything, you have to find this you have to find this core of the game. Essentially, you have to find your 5 seconds of fun, or the repeatable thing that's very, very minimalist and small. And then once you have that, then you can start adding new things on top. The reason why a lot of people add things to their games is because they do it to fix problems, right? It's like, it's not interesting enough, so I have to add this and this and this. Or this isn't quite easy to understand enough. Okay, so I guess we'll add this and this and this and this to make it easier to understand. Or this dungeon is too short, so let's add this and this and this. If your solution to every problem is to add new things, then of course you're gonna end up with a lot of feature creep. So you'll have to start finding other solutions for your problems, other solutions than adding more stuff.
That's well put, man. That's very, very insightful.